I realize my journey is one of from hustle to harmony. And I want to talk to you about where I got to into a space where eventually everything fell apart. Like, just truth be told, a few years ago, I was at my worst and everything went backwards. I found myself having no money, being broke, business falling apart, being 30 pounds overweight, relationships struggling, feeling completely unfulfilled, and wondering how in the heck did I get here? How in the heck is this happening to me? Okay. And so I want to get to that space in my story. And then I want to share with you how over this last year, I truly reinvented myself. And I could say I'm in one of the best spaces I'd ever been in personally in my life with my thoughts about myself, with what I'm now doing for my business and my entrepreneurial journey, and just where I'm headed. Welcome, fellow entrepreneurs and goal getters, to Entrepreneurial Elevation, Unleashing Greatness Within, with myself, your host, Kelley Beveridge. And on today's episode, I'm actually going to be sharing my story, a part of my story with you. I don't have a guest on today, it's just myself. It is December 31st today, so the end of a new year going into 2025. And I thought I would come on and share a little bit of my entrepreneurial journey. And I'm going to be really honest and transparent. I didn't plan exactly what I'm going to say because I was resisting coming on and sharing with all of you because I'm used to being the one speaking and interviewing. And I love to share and facilitate and teach and guide. Yet, as you probably know, coming on and sharing parts of your story takes vulnerability, and it's like being a truth teller and having everybody see parts of my life that maybe I've been keeping to myself. And so instead of sitting and writing out what I should say or thinking about what to talk about so that it sounded great, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to hop on and push record. And as I tell my guests all the time, that whatever you speak into the audience, whatever message you have to share today, it's going to be exactly what the people who are listening need to hear. And so I'm just going to trust that and take my own advice and do my best just to be true and honest and authentic about my journey. And I thought it would be great to come on and share for a few reasons. One, if you've been listening to my podcast, thank you. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I appreciate you so much. And I thought it would be nice for you to know a little bit more about me. Number two, I get a lot of value when I hear other people's stories and journeys, and not the shiny story, right? Not the one once people have broken through and they're doing great things and they're creating success. I get inspired by that. I don't feel jealous or, in competition to people who are successful. I actually get inspired by that. Yet I get more inspired when I hear people's stories of where they were at, what they went through, the transformation that they had, and where they're at now. That inspires me even more. So I'm going to do my best to share that part of my story with you. And yeah, I think those are the reasons why I wanted to hop on here and just be transparent. And so a little bit about myself. If you don't know who I am, I know my podcast is relatively new. I started it in February of 2024. And so a lot of you who are listening, I know, are my friends or family or people that I've been in business with or in my personal development community. So thank you. I appreciate you. You've been a part of my life. And some of you who are listening, you don't know me. And so I'm from Calgary, born and raised, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I was really blessed to grow up with a pretty privileged lifestyle, and I was able to travel a lot. So the travel gene and this gypsy gene of going out and exploring and being an adventurer has always been a part of my life. And I think it's what instilled in me this sense of freedom, like really just having this desire of freedom and to be free. It's one of my high values that really does drive me innately. And my path into entrepreneurship, I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur back in the days. I was the typical, hey, you go to school, you get a job, and then you work until forever, until you retire. That was my game plan. I did go to university. I got my degree in international business, which is funny that it came full circle and I had an international business and continued to. Yet the reason why I took international business in all transparency is because you got to do an exchange. And I was like, sweet, I'm going to go to Mexico and finish off my university traveling throughout Mexico with my friends. That'll be fun. That's why I chose it. And so I got my degree. And then how I put myself through school, my parents helped, yet I also worked in restaurants. And so after university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I don't know those people who just always knew what they wanted to do. I applaud you because I was never that person. And so I just went and I worked in restaurants. I worked at the Keg. If you know that, if you're from Canada, it's a steakhouse. And I just worked my way up into management and eventually managed restaurants. I was a manager of a Starbucks. I was a district manager of a healthy food company. And so I was in the restaurant industry for quite some time in the management area, which I really enjoyed because I got to learn a lot and practice a lot. And I think that's where this idea of business started to get instilled in me. And also this idea of just being in a space of leadership, right? And impacting people and working with teams. I also played sports growing up. My whole life, my main focus really as a child and in early childhood was sports and athletics. Like I love sports. I lived for sports. And I just think being a part of sports teams teaches you so much about life and yourself and being able to work with others. And so that also, I think, is where a lot of my natural leadership came from. Yet I had a friend who introduced me to a personal development company back in 2007. And that's really where things started to change for me. That was my first, I would say, real benchmark in my life where I had this taste for the first time of pushing pause in my life and looking at myself from a different perspective and asking myself questions like, hey, Kelley, what do you actually want? What do you truly want? What's your heart's desire? And having people support me and taking a look at why do I show up a certain way? Why is my personality the way that it is? What are my fears? What's stopping me from getting the things that I desire? What are the stories I'm telling myself that aren't serving me based on my circumstances, environment, childhood? And so, really investing in myself. And I spent the next 10 years really taking a lot of personal development and personal growth. And I ended up working for the company. And that was just such a blessing in disguise because I was constantly around this growth mindset of how can we become more, better, and different. And not from a perspective of not being enough, yet from a space of there's always more available to us. Right. And so I worked for this company. I was in a leadership role and I really got to step into practicing, impacting people in a way of seeing the greatness in them and doing my best to help them call it out of themselves. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with that energy. I fell in love in being in that environment. I really, nothing lights me up more than seeing somebody have this inner shift within themselves to realize how freaking great they are and go out and start living their life in alignment with what. And so I was involved in that work for quite some time. And still, I was an employee. I was never an entrepreneur. And then I had somebody approach me, and people start to approach me to be in a network marketing company. I'd never thought of ever having my own business or being independent or creating my own money outside of employment. And yet I was really attracted to it because the people who were approaching me, they had a lot of what I want. And that's a lesson I would share for you in life is, you know what? Look to the people who have what you desire and not just in like materialistic things and the lifestyle they have. That's a part of it. So people who have the lifestyle that you desire are doing what you do, yet the kind of person they are. And whatever those values are for you, philanthropist, kind hearted, making a difference, having an impact, treating their family well, being involved in communities, right? I always like to say sometimes people have a bad image of people with money, and it's not, has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with the person. You know, it's like that saying, and excuse my language, but an asshole who's poor is going to be a rich asshole, right? So it's not about the money, it's about the quality of the person. And I also want to share a big lesson that I learned in my life. And I'm going to hopefully do my best to share some lessons as I share my story. Is that I realize that the environments that I choose to put myself in are going to completely dictate the quality of my life. Who I hang out with, where I hang out, what I'm listening to, who I'm listening to. And so if you're not where you want to be or you're struggling right now, I really encourage you to take a look around your environment. Not always easy because sometimes our family isn't necessarily the environment that's going to set us up to win, but you could always find a positive, uplifting environment elsewhere, even if it's for something like listening to a podcast, right? Or what you choose to listen to and what you choose to watch. And, anyways, going back to my story, I was introduced to network marketing, and the people that were introducing it to me, I valued, I respected, their lifestyle was appealing to me, their energy and their come from. And so I said, yes, I surprised myself and I said, I'm in, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And so I dived in and like I do everything, I dived all in 100%. And therein started my entrepreneurial journey. And I've been an entrepreneur since, geez, when was that? I think that was around 2011 or something like that. Around 2011. Don't quote me on my timelines. And so I dived in and thank the stars, right? My mentor, because sometimes we get involved in businesses or entrepreneurship and we have to go through a few different experiences or mentors or communities to find the right one that aligns with us. Yet I was very blessed and my mentorship could not have been better. I learned so much. I got involved and I just told myself I'm going to be really coachable. And I that's another piece of advice that I have. If you want to succeed in life and you're starting something new that you're learning and you're the student and you don't quite know how to get from A to B, find somebody who's willing to invest in you and be very coachable, meaning just do what they're guiding you to do. And that's not an easy thing to do, by the way, because what that means is it's going to have to call forth parts of you that are scared, that are uncomfortable. It's outside your comfort zone, right? If you're doing things you've never done before, there's uncertainty, there's all those fears that pop up, all those stories we tell ourselves. Yet do whatever you need to move through that. And an easy way to do that is to find mentorship who are willing to invest in you, that you learn to trust, have your back, and they're credible. And so that's what I did. And I just was really coachable and I started to grow my business. And I'm not going to go into the details of my business. There's lots of lessons there. But what I really want to share today and where I'm going with my journey is I realize my journey is one of from hustle to harmony. And I want to talk to you about where I got to into a space where eventually everything fell apart. Like, just truth be told, a few years ago, I was at my worst and everything went backwards. I found myself having no money, being broke, business falling apart, being 30 pounds overweight, relationships struggling, feeling completely unfulfilled, and wondering how in the heck did I get here? How in the heck is this happening to me? Okay. And so I want to get to that space in my story. And then I want to share with you how over this last year I truly reinvented myself. And I could say I'm in one of the best spaces I'd ever been in personally in my life with my thoughts about myself, with what I'm now doing for my business and my entrepreneurial journey and just where I'm headed. And so I'm just letting you know where I'm going with my story here. So I dived into this business and it was the best thing ever. And I say that whenever you start something new, usually the feelings that come about are excitement, right? So if you're somewhere in your journey and you're just getting started, or think of back to when you got started, usually it's excitement, right? For what's possible, for the hope that it's bringing, for the goals that you have in your mind that you believe you're going to create. But when you start to move towards the things that you say you desire, a lot of times frustration pops up, anxiety, overwhelm, because there's going to be situations outside of your control, circumstances, adversities, problems. Our own mindset most of the time gets in the way. Usually the biggest problem is ourself, right? And our thinking and our limiting beliefs about what we're capable of, right? But that's all going to come up to test ourselves and to test you around how badly you say you want the things that you want. Now, unfortunately, when these feelings arise and it doesn't feel good, it feels better to be excited. The truth is 95% of people will quit. This is a scientific framework that most people will quit when they get to those feelings of frustration, anxious, and overwhelmed in the beginning of the startup of whatever it is that you're starting, whether it be a business, a health plan, a relationship, I don't know, learning to play an instrument, whatever it is. So just check in with yourself, because if you're somebody who is wanting to quit when the going gets tough, when you're just starting out, that's a pattern you're going to run most of the time. And if you don't bust up that pattern and get through it with whatever you're doing now, if what you're doing now is meant to be, you're going to face it in the next thing you choose to do. So you may as well face it now. Okay. So I had a lot of those instances pop up in the beginning of my journey, but I just kept working through it. And I moved into what's called the investment phase. The investment phase is being willing to surrender to the necessary work in front of you that's required to develop your confidence and your skill. So how does skill happen? It's through the repetition of doing something over and over again. And so in my business, when it came to the business skills, there's things like learning how to invite and recruit and share my story, talk like I'm talking to you now, be in front of the room and discuss the business, talk about the products, learn how to share about the compensation plan. So there's all these business skills, how to manage my time, priority manage, all of these things. And then there's the mindset skills, how to have a growth mindset, that of a leader, that of somebody who's going to take responsibility for my results and constantly tell myself stories that I can and I will and I must. And so I spent a lot of years in this investment phase, just fine tuning my craft and my skill and my entrepreneurship, my belief in myself, right? How beliefs are created is by what we tell ourselves over and over again. And so if you're somebody who's in the beginning, and I say the beginning a year or two, my encouragement is to be willing to surrender and just trust the process and know that you've got to have a little bit of delayed gratification in the results. I'm not saying not get results now, but have some kind of delayed gratification, knowing that the payback is coming, knowing that the longer you hang out investing in yourself and your skills and your craft and other people, the bigger the reward. Okay. And that with entrepreneurship is having the mindset of the end in mind. You're not here for a short time, you're here for a long time, right? Isn't that a song? We're not here for a good time, we're here for a long time or something like that. But that's the truth in business, in entrepreneurship, and setting goals. We're here for the long game. And the journey is a big part of it. And I can tell you for years, I did not enjoy the journey. And that is also a big lesson of mine, which I'll get to. So I literally traveled the world with this business. I traveled all over the United States multiple times, drove up to Utah once a month. I eventually went and opened up markets and countries when that was available because, as I shared, I love traveling. I went to Vietnam and Indonesia. I lived in Chile for a year. And then eventually I went to South Africa, and I lived in South Africa back and forth for about 6 years, traveling back and forth. I couldn't get a visa there, so I could only be there for 3 months. So I'd be there for 3 months, come home for 2 or 3 months, go back for 3 months, come home for 3 or 4 months, go back for 3 months. And I did that for 6 years building my business. And so as I was progressing along and as I was in my business, I really was willing to do whatever it takes. That's what's coming to mind to share with you, is just having this mindset of willing to do whatever it takes. And the cool thing about that is usually when you're in a space where you truly, genuinely are willing to do whatever it takes, you almost don't have to always do whatever it takes. Yet it does require a certain level of growth and commitment and risk. I had so many stories I can tell you. There were times I was flying to South Africa, and because I had commitments that I had given to run events or run meetings and things like that, and I didn't have the money to go. And so I remember one time I sold my bed, I sold my kitchen plates, right? I sold my office desk, and I literally was on a plane on my way to South Africa with $500 in my pocket for a 3-month stay, not knowing how I was going to pay my bills because I had rent in Calgary, I had rent in South Africa, I had cars in both places. And I was going there for 3 months to travel around the country, right? And be of service and be of leadership and grow my business. And so sometimes when we have these big goals, it's going to require of us things we didn't even know we had within inside us. Now, I'm not saying you got to sell your bed, right? But just as an example, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice? And there will be a level of sacrifice as you are working towards your goals and dreams. And so I was building my business in South Africa, and literally things finally after years, I don't even know, 7 or 8 years, I was in this space where it felt like good times. I was able to relax a little bit. Things were coming together. And then what do you think happened? COVID. So I had flown to South Africa for one of my stays there. And this was when there was like talks of COVID. When was that? 2019 or 2020, right? And anyways, South Africa decided to go on an absolute lockdown and close down the country while I was there. So I had just gotten into my apartment. My boyfriend was on his way. He got stuck in Europe, wasn't able to get into the country, had to turn around and go back to Calgary. And I was in South Africa by myself, not able to leave. And we were on lockdown in apartments, and with a complete unknown of what was happening, what was going on, how bad was it, how long would this be going on for? And so at this time, I'd been building my business old school, which would be considered old school now, person to person, belly to belly. By the way, when I first went to South Africa, I do want to share, I didn't know one person. I did not know one person. And I went to a completely new country. And I literally just started reaching out to people and saying, hey, would you love to connect? I'm here to grow a business. Would love to know more about you and share what I'm doing. And I just met with person after person after person after person. And so when I say be willing to be uncomfortable and develop your skill, I met with I at least over 1,000 people sharing. And that's what I mean by being willing to do unthinkable things or what most people wouldn't be willing to do. How much do you think I grew through that process? Like huge. And not only that, I ended up building a business and a community in this country that I'd never been in that was over 1,000 people. Right. And I just was able to meet the most wonderful, blessed human beings and have the biggest adventure of my lifetime. I was driving in this country. It's on the opposite side of the road. I'm driving into different villages where there's never even been a white person before. And I'm going in and I'm connecting with all these people and these women. And they're like, who is this person? I'm showing up talking about business and products and leadership. And I'm really doing my best to empower people to own their life and own their own business so they can take care of themselves and their financial future for them and their families. And so I grew so much by taking myself out of my comfort zone and putting myself in a completely foreign scenario, right? Needing to adapt, right? So just wanted to give that plug that if you're feeling like you're not in a space of growth, take yourself and go and do something uncomfortable and you will adapt. You will. It's like sink or swim. You will eventually swim. Trust me on this. Okay. So, anyways, I get to South Africa. They lock everything down. I'm now in this apartment. And all of a sudden, with our business, we're like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we supposed to grow our business? I guess we have to take it online. Not only that, our business at the time was like almost 300 products. And because they couldn't get the products into the country, it went down to 13 products. So now we have 13 products. I'm not able to go and meet people. We can't deliver products. Like just everything is going crazy. And I'm stuck in this apartment. And oh, by the way, I get to the apartment and the lady says, oh, sorry, but there's no Wi-Fi. What? No Wi-Fi? So now I'm like, what am I going to do? Guess what? I've got to go and ask for support, do something uncomfortable again. The person underneath me, I knew. And so I went and I said, hey, listen, can I pay you to borrow your Wi-Fi? I don't have any. And they said yes. So I was able to get Wi-Fi. Now, keep in mind, the Wi-Fi in South Africa isn't very great in the first place. I'm borrowing it from my downstairs neighbor. I have to be in this apartment. I'm stuck there. I was there for 5 months. Okay. And I could only get the Wi-Fi reception in this little corner by the kitchen. So this was my situation. Oh, yeah. And on top of it, in South Africa, they have something called load shedding. They've had it for years. They still have it now. So for anywhere from 2 to up to 8 hours a day, you don't have power or electricity. I'm not even kidding. I cannot make this up. And there was times when I didn't have water. Okay. So this is my situation. Okay. So what do you think? I could have went for me and become a victim. I'm in South Africa by myself, all these situations. Now what? Or I could take a look at this situation and I can tell myself a story that serves me. There's something called the law of opposites always at play. Okay. And it means if there's good, there's bad. If it's up, there's down. If there's fear, there's love. Okay. When you're coming from fear, which by the way, I do on a regular basis, I just learned to switch, switch, switch. Yeah. But when you're coming from fear, it's when you're in a mindset of being a victim. I could have been like, I'm here. This sucks for me. Everybody feel bad for me. How am I supposed to build my business? I'd hardly have Wi-Fi, like all these things, right? Or you can come from persecution, right? All of a sudden taking the finger and pointing, oh, the government, COVID, I can't believe this, right? Like persecution. Or we come from rescuing. You know what? I'm just not going to grow or focus on my business. Rescuing me would have just been telling myself, it's okay, Kelley, just chill out. Don't do anything with your life while you're here. Everybody would understand, right? So if you find yourself in relationships dynamics or within yourself, rescuing yourself, being a victim, and I'm not saying that you haven't been victimized. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we're operating in a situation that we can possibly be in control of, but with a victim mindset, okay? Or we're persecuting people. That is a fear energy, okay? Nothing great gets created in that energy. And so I chose because I had this lessons and these learnings ingrained into me throughout my years of entrepreneurship and personal development. And so I realized, okay, I have a choice here, which by the way, we always do. where I could create a story that serves me. Because really, what is the other option? To create one that doesn't, and then nothing good's going to come from that. And so I literally chose to come from love. Okay, what is love? Love is I create the whole of my reality. Okay. And I like to say that we get to create stories. And which one am I telling myself? And is it going to serve me for this moment? What are the blessings of this situation? So, what were the blessings of the situation I was in? I got to take a look at that. You know what? I get to practice being disciplined, consistent, really narrowing in on my business. I get to learn how to build things online. That's cool because now I'm going to be able to do it from wherever, whenever. We have a few products. Great. That's going to make things easier on what to talk about. I'm here by myself. I've been wanting to focus on my health. I guess I got time now, right? I can reconnect. I never talked to my family more than I did in that time and my friends because I had the time. So there were so many blessings. And so what I can tell you during that time, long story long, maybe, I don't know, long story short, is that my business grew the most that it ever had in the entirety of my business during that time that I was in lockdown in South Africa and we quote unquote had to move everything online with limited products. And literally during that time, I got up to selling $100,000 of products a month. I was selling whitening toothpaste, people, at $20 a pop. Okay. And something called a Lumi Spa, which supports your skin. Okay. I still sell those things, but I was selling, that's what I was selling. And I was selling over $100,000 worth a month. So our business went boom because of the system we put in place, because we were willing to change. We were willing to do things differently. We were willing to be adaptable. Okay. Such huge qualities of entrepreneurship and just life. Okay. I surrendered to my scenario and my situation. I told myself a story that served me. And so my business went boom during that time. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. This is amazing. Okay. So that's the great part of my story. Okay. So now that happened and I eventually got home. I took a repatriation flight out. So the country was still on lockdown. I eventually took a flight home. That was crazy. People were in hazmats. We got police escorts to the airport. The airport was shut down and pitch black, except for the one plane that we got on. It was crazy. But anyways, I got home and over the next couple years, what started to happen is my business started to go backwards. Things really started to get tough in South Africa. People were passing away on my team. I had most people that were in my business and in the community that I was a part of, they had family members or friends pass away. And so you can imagine what was going on in people's lives, and then just the financial strains, and then just the stress of COVID lingering around. Everybody has a COVID story, right? And circumstantially, there was things that were outside of my control, and my business started to go backwards. And I would say I spent a couple years in survival mode, scrambling, attempting to resurrect my business and what I had created and put my blood, sweat, and tears into. And I, at the time, was really in a masculine energy where I didn't know any different. And I really worked within my business from this masculine energy. Nothing wrong with masculine energy, yet it's not necessarily healthy when that's the energy only that you're bringing to the table. And I was in it. Like, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? I've got to work harder. I've got to work more hours. I've got to do more. I don't know what else I could have done. I was doing all the right things. I was showing up. I was on calls for 10 hours a day, back to back to back. When I was in Calgary, starting at 4 in the morning, 4 till 5, 5 till 6, 6 till 7. I'm not even kidding you. I would have to tell people, can you hang on a second? I've got to go to the bathroom. Or do you mind that I eat while I'm on the call with you? And I was like literally in it, just majorly working, workaholic. I'd get off 10 hours of calls and then I'd have to do all the follow up. So I was working 15-hour days, and I did that for a couple years, attempting to recreate what I had and then some. And I realized that, like, being in this survival mode of just never enough, not quite getting there, doing more, it wasn't serving me. And I went into this space of what I like to call disillusionment after you get this big payback. Because usually when you create a lot of success, what comes after that usually is stress or disillusionment, because now you're at a different level of leadership. Maybe if you're making more money, your lifestyle is also at that. So if your business drops, now you're in trouble, right? And that's what happened to me. And I started to question myself. What am I doing? Am I even enjoying this? Right? Am I actually fulfilled? And I started to have really deep, honest conversations with myself. Yet I was really up against it because I'm somebody who I really believe in being in integrity and doing what I say I'm going to do. And for years, I had told people I was going to be at the top of this company and I was going to be really successful and do my best to impact as many lives as possible. And I was going to have this global business and be this boss babe, successful businesswoman. And right before my eyes, it was crumbling and falling apart. And so I really felt like a failure. I felt like a failure, right? And I can get emotional right now, even talking about it and thinking about it actually. Like I felt, wow, like I thought that I was going to be able to do this and I can't. It's not happening for me. What's going on? What am I not seeing? What am I not getting? What am I not doing? And it took me a while to get out of that mode of feeling like I had failed because I felt responsible for so many people, right? And I felt like if I wasn't achieving success or if I was thinking about leaving this business because I was, that I'd be letting so many people down. My mentors, my community, the people within my team, my friends and family that I had shared with what I was doing. And I didn't want to let people down. I didn't want to let myself down. And so I stayed with it for a while with one toe in and one toe out in indecision. And I can tell you, indecision is the worst space to be. It's exhausting. Being in indecision, being in toleration of anything in life, of whatever we're working towards, whatever we're in, whether it be business, whether it be health, whether it be relationships. If I can give you a big piece of advice, it would be to check yourself and ask yourself, where in your life are you tolerating and where are you in indecision? And make a choice to get out of that. Either accept or reject. Do not tolerate and just make a decision. It may not be the right one, but you'll never know until you make it because that's what will bring you some of your energy back. Okay. And so that was a big lesson that I learned. And so once I went through the emotions and I did choose, actually, I realized something and I realized, you know what, Kelley, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your mind. And what I realized with business is that I've always had a big vision, right? I've had a big vision to live this big life and travel and have adventure and to really make a difference in thousands of people's lives such that they see the greatness in who they are and what they're capable of. And to have this lifestyle of freedom where I don't have to work a 9 to 5, I can work from wherever I want. And the truth is that vision hasn't changed and it didn't change. The only thing that changed was the vehicle, the how to of what I was going to focus on to get myself there. And so I want you to hear that message that I really believe there's infinite ways to get what you want. And sometimes it's just the how to that needs to change. And there is a definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting it to be different. So I just realized it was okay to change the vehicle, the how to. Okay. And when I allowed myself to lean into that, I actually started to realize how far I had come. And this is something I read a book, and I encourage you to read this book. It's called The Gap in the Gain. If you're a high achiever, I encourage you to read this book because it talks about how high achievers are just so hard on themselves and for the most part, never necessarily fulfilled because we have where we're at and we have where we're going. And there's always a gap there, right? And as we're chasing success, as we're chasing where we're going, there's this energy of never enough. I'm not there. I'm never enough. I haven't got there yet. And even when we're literally incrementally creating results, there's never really an acknowledgement of what we've done because we're always looking at where we're going and the gap. And in this book, he talks about, yes, you want to have goals. You want to be working towards big things that you desire, yet the energy and your mindset and your thinking and where you're coming from, it's not going to serve you to be in that gap of never enough. You want to come from what's called the gain. And so what is the gain? The gain is measuring your success backwards. So if you look at where you're at and you look at where you've come from, so it's 2024, literally December 31st, right? So where did you come from at the beginning of this year or the beginning of the last 5 years? What are some wins? What can you be proud of? What did you do that worked? And I encourage you to take pen to paper and start just writing off the top of your head, even if they seem small, write everything down. And when I did that and allowed myself to look at that, I could do a whole podcast episode of all the things that I created in my life up until that moment and just the risks I take and being this global entrepreneur and building a life and a business in Chile and South Africa and traveling and the amount of lives I impacted, including my own, and who I had become, this leader who was just willing to go on all these adventures and do all these things. And there was just so much. Okay. And so I started to take a look at that. And then I also realized a really big lesson that success without alignment, alignment of values, alignment of what really fulfills you, right? Alignment of where we're spending our time, effort, and energy. It's just not sustainable. It is just not sustainable. And when I was looking at my life and it was all crashing down and I felt like I was falling flat on my face, everything was out of alignment. Like I was literally just working. I had gained 30 pounds. My relationship was on the fritz. I hardly ever saw my friends and family. My personal development had taken a back seat because I was just in this survival mode, right? And so I was really out of alignment. So what did I do? Okay, so I literally decided to leave that business. Now, I did leave it, I feel, better than I found it. And that's also a piece of advice. I didn't just say, see ya. Like, I had courageous conversations with people. I let people know what I was doing. I spent extra time investing in certain people so that they were okay. And I maintained my relationships. I did it with integrity. And that made me feel better about my choice as well. And then I felt, okay, I've got an open canvas. And so if this is you, we're going into a new year. Those of you who are listening, you're probably going to be at all different walks of life. Maybe you're struggling and the last couple of years have been really hard. My heart does go out to you. I get it, right? Maybe you just reinvented yourself this last year like I did, which I'm going to share with you. Like, great for you, right? Or maybe you're in like massive momentum and you're kicking ass and taking names and awesome. Like, I celebrate you. So no matter where you're at, we're going into a new year, which for whatever reason, energetically, it gives us the permission to have a blank slate and just say, okay, restart, refresh, regroup. Now what? Where are we going? What we up to? And so when I was in this space, one thing I decided is I didn't want to just stay plateaued. I could have just stayed doing what I was doing. That wasn't working for me. Okay. I could have chose out and just said, I'm not even going to be an entrepreneur. That obviously would not work for me. And then I thought, I want advanced growth. I want to accelerate. I want to have transformation. I want to go to the next level. I just don't know what that's going to look like yet or what I'm going to do to get there. Okay. There's a first step, right? So just make a decision. And so what did I choose to do is I just chose to start to take a look at, I measured my success backwards. I asked myself what I did that worked. What are some transferable skills? What did I love about what I was doing before? What didn't I like? What wasn't working for me? What was the stories I was telling myself? Right. And I'd say a big thing that was necessary for a shift in myself, and you might relate to this, was my identity. Okay. And I don't mean identity like rules, like what you do and who you are, what I was telling myself about myself. So I was coming from scarcity and I was working so hard to be this successful businesswoman, but I didn't have the success in front of businesswomen. I was just being a businesswoman, working my ass off, not creating the results that I feel that I was worthy of. And if I was really honest with myself, it was because deep down in my core, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it about myself. And I didn't believe abundance was available for me, even though I spoke about it a lot, because I was coming from this scarcity energy of chasing. And so I realized that I wanted to shift. And so I started to ask myself, what does success actually look like to me? Not to other people, not to my parents, not to my family, not to my mentor, not to my colleagues, right? Not to my friends. What does success look like to me? And I just started to ask myself that question and come up with a few things. And one of them was, I want to learn how to work part-time hours and make full-time income. That would be a big shift from what I was doing. I want to truly love what I'm doing. Now, it's not always going to be roses, right? We're not always going to want to need to do the things we need to do, but typically the energy, I want it to be ease, to give me energy, to be enjoyment, to feel fulfilled, to feel like it's my calling, that there's purpose attached to it, that I'm making an impact and I'm being of service. I love talking about personal development and being a facilitator and guiding people to realize what's great about them and going and applying it into their life so that you, the listeners, can get more of what you desire so that the reality that you're creating for yourself is one that you love to be in. And I wanted to also learn how to enjoy the journey, right? Not just have a goal in mind and be willing to do whatever it takes to get there without enjoying it. Okay. And so that requires being present, being in the moment, slowing down. And so that's what I did. I took all of 2024 and I slowed down. And I can tell you when I started to do that, I didn't realize how much anxiety I had in my body. I was such an anxious person. And I never in a million years would have thought I was somebody who was anxiety ridden. But because I was no longer busy, because I was no longer masking my life with busyness and I had all this abundance of time, I realized how my nervous system was just so shot and I was exhausted, right? I really was exhausted. And so I just started to say, you know what? If I'm going to shift things in my life, the number one most important thing to do is to take care of myself and take care of my health and to honor that because I haven't allowed myself the time to do it because I was always too busy. Anybody can relate, too busy to take care of ourselves. Guess what? If you're not operating at your best with your health, you're not ever going to be able to create any of the goals that you want, right? So I was like, health is number one. And so I literally started allowing myself, and I don't mean now I have to be careful because I'm a high achiever, that I don't all of a sudden say health is going to be my goal. And then now I throw everything into my health. And all of a sudden I'm in massive achievement mode again, being busy, focusing on my health, doing all the same patterns that weren't healthy for me in my business, right? And recreating the same situation. So when I say slow down, I started to take a look at my good friend Jody. She has something called the Pink K Energy. Check her out. She was on one of my podcasts. So I started to do things to calm my nervous system down. Okay. Meditating, just waking up in the morning and God forbid having a coffee and not like feeling like I need to get right into action, going to bed earlier, not having my phone with me when I go to sleep. I have a dog. So I just thank God. I swear he saved me. I just went for a walk every day in nature. And I just started doing all of these things, having baths. I was never somebody who had a bath because only lazy people have baths. That's what I thought. So I started having some baths. I just started doing all of these tranquil, nice things for myself and just slowing down. I started journaling and really just working on myself. And then I started doing things for my health and putting my health first, not just saying it, but actually following through on it. And so that's a big thing that I started to do. The other thing I started to do is I actually obviously needed to start to make some money, right? What was I going to do? And I literally reinvented myself with my business. So I created a business called Entrepreneurial Elevation. This podcast is called that, with Unleashing Greatness Within. Yet I started the podcast as a passion project. And that's really what it is because I wanted to do things that lit me up, that put the spark back in me. And I love being a connector. I love meeting new people and learning from people and being around entrepreneurs. And I thought, you know what? I just took myself out of a major community of entrepreneurs, which I thrived in and I loved so much. How do I recreate that? And that's a big reason why I created this podcast, because I wanted to be in that kind of a community again. And I wanted to give people a platform to elevate themselves. And I got through some dark times listening to podcasts. And so my hope is that my podcast could support you through whatever you're going through and just add value to your life. And so it became a passion project for me that just relit the spark. And then I just started one day at a time, one step at a time, asking myself, what is my business going to be? And making a decision, I did not sit with it forever. Okay. If I learned anything previously, it was about not being in indecision for a long period of time. And so I just said, what do I love to do? I love facilitating masterminds. So I created a business where I run I run masterminds for growth minded women entrepreneurs to break through to the next financial ceiling of whatever their desires are. And in a way where, in order to do that, you've got to really take a look at your identity, right? Who you are. Do you believe you're a successful businesswoman? And really do some work on your self-talk and the stories you're telling yourself and your narrative about you and your life and what's possible. Taking a look at money frequency and really cleaning up the money. Okay. So like, do you know where you're at with your bills? Are they paid? Are your taxes up to date? And decluttering your house, decluttering your space, controlling your environment, telling yourself positive things around money, changing the story around money, becoming in love with your money story, really raising your frequency, and then looking at the business tools, what needs to skill up, how do you align with your purpose? And of course, why do you think I created this course and have been doing it for the last year now and I'm the happiest I've ever been? Is because it's so in alignment with myself and my journey and what I went through. right? And so I literally broke the $100,000 mark this year in my new business. And I say that because one, I don't want people to have weird energy with money. I feel like money brings about such weird energy, just like relationships and sex. Nobody, it was so taboo to talk about it. Now it's like money. People are so weird. And especially as a woman, I feel like women, especially, have a lot of guilt and shame around saying they want to make money. And so I was broke a year ago. I fell flat on my face. I just shared with you my story. And I went from broke to over $100,000 in less than a year from applying so much of what I'm sharing with you and so much more. And my mentor used to tell me the equation of net worth. Okay, so net worth equals self worth plus other worth. And self worth is the ability to take care of yourself. Okay, and believing in yourself and doing what you need to do, keeping your word to yourself such that you have an abundance of money coming into your life. You're creating, you're manifesting, and not just enough to get by, like an overflow of money. Okay. And then other worth is the ability to invest in others, to take care of others, to support others, to empower others, to pour your energy into others. And typically, feminine energy is low on self worth, and masculine energy is high on self worth, and feminine energy is high on other worth, and masculine energy is low on other worth. This is a generalization, but it's typically true. And so I realized I had to raise my self worth when it came to earning income. And actually, the coolest part about this is I actually now do work part time and I'm making full time income. And it's just my first year of business. And so I can just see I have grown so much in this last year. It hasn't been easy. I've had to do a lot of things that have been uncomfortable for me. And a big part of that is just slowing down, right? Slowing down so that I can speed up. I've said no to a lot of things. I've gotten really clear at what my values are. And I can tell you, this is one of the biggest things that I teach. And this is one of the biggest lessons that I had is that my life fell apart because my values were out of whack and I wasn't honoring them. I wasn't honoring my health. I wasn't honoring my relationships. Those are two things that are the most important to me. And so I started to honor them and keep my word to those things. And guess what happened? My finances grew, right? It's no coincidence. And so designing my life in a way where when I look at my calendar and I look at my schedule, most of what I see is my values mapped out, being very intentional of where I'm spending my time, effort, and energy, who I'm giving my time to, saying no to a lot of things and being careful of what I'm saying yes to, being intentional of what I'm saying yes to, raising my standards for what do I allow into my life. Okay. That one has been huge. So not tolerating certain things anymore. I'm still working on it. Okay, I'm not perfect, but that's a big one. And so I'm just really excited for 2025 and what it's going to bring. I've mapped out my goals for the year and I've changed my relationship with goals. My goals I have set more for an intention so that when I wake up in the morning, I have a reason or something that I'm moving towards. Okay. And I think that having goals is important because it gives us a reason to grow and change and into the version of the person that we're meant to be, right? Constantly improving ourselves, not from a space of never good enough, but just from a space of because we're worth it. And I love having goals also because it's exciting. It's exciting to get clear about the things that really matter to me and have them come to fruition and have them come to be a part of my reality. Yet going about it in the way of the gain, right? That I'm just bringing the next version of me to the table every day, doing the best I can, having fun, enjoying the journey, being present in the moment. I am practicing all these things. Okay. And so that's a bit of my story. And so if you're still listening, thank you. Thank you if you're still listening. It has been a journey. There's so much to come. Just a couple of the things. I set something called a misogi this year. That is a big, hairy, audacious goal, basically something that's going to challenge you, that's fun and exciting and puts you in nature. And so my goal is to go and walk the El Camino. It's a kind of a pilgrimage walk throughout Spain where you get up and walk 15 to 20 kilometers every day and you're in nature. That's really exciting. I have a goal to grow this podcast. So if you're listening, please can comment and review, share with your friends. I would be forever grateful. And just, I'm learning that skill. I've never had a podcast before. I don't know how to grow it. I'm just winging it. So if you're listening, thank you. I have a goal to grow my business and to really impact people's lives. I run masterminds. I created an online course, believe it or not, when I was in South Africa during that lockdown in that little corner that I had Wi-Fi in. And I finally put it into a system and a program that I can share and sell. So if you want to set your goals, check that out. It's super reasonable. I put it at 67 bucks just so everybody can have access to it. Because I really just want people to really have clarity around what you want in life and what you desire, and then just start to learn the tools to achieve it so that you're worthy of your success and whatever it is that you want. And so I also have some health goals that I'm working towards, relationship goals that I'm working towards. And I'm just really looking forward to spending more time having fun and adventure. And my word for the year is aliveness, just to do everything with this energy of feeling alive, feeling joyful, feeling blessed and grateful for the fact that I got another day to be here, right? And just really being present with what I'm doing, with who I'm with, how I'm being, and being kind and to myself and giving myself grace as I'm in this journey of life with all of you. And so just thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you did get value or you want to share about yourself, I would love to hear about you. I would love to know about you. I would love to know what you're working towards, maybe what you're going through. Please reach out to me. I'm available, I'm accessible, and I just appreciate all of you so much. With love, greatness, and success, it's your host, Kelley Beveridge.